Hello everyone, today is 31st of August, last day of the summer 2024 and Saturday, so I hope you will have a wonderful day and a great weekend. Now it's about 9:30 in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for the day in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. And there are quite a few very significant developments and news that I'd like to share with you for this moment. And I will start with this report from RT that Ukrainian cluster bomb attack on Belgorod city of the Russian Federation kills 5 civilians. So 5 civilians have been killed and there are 37 wounded. And the latest reports are that the number of casualties increased up to 50. Among them, at least 6 children, as a result of Ukrainian missile attack on Russia's Belgorod region. Regional governor Vyacheslav Gladkov has stated, and then quote, our air defense systems worked over Belgorod and several targets were shot down as they approached the city, Gladkov said on Telegram on Friday. To our great sorrow, one person died as a result of the direct hit on a passenger car. In addition to the vehicle, an apartment building and several commercial buildings were struck also. The governor later updated the death toll to 5. So unfortunately, Kiev regime continues its terrorist activity and targeting the civilians, direct strikes on civilians. And next news is also about terrorist activity of the Kiev regime, because we have a report from RIA Novosti that the Kiev regime is trying to blackmail personnel of the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Of course, what Kiev regime wants is to force some of the people that are working on Zaporozhye nuclear power plant to do some sabotage, and we are talking about nuclear power station, by the way. So you tell me how reckless and irresponsible Zelensky and his criminal associates really are. I mean, they are terrorists, by the way, and mass murderers, and they will sign up literally for anything to harm Russia, and first of all to maintain their own position in power and the money flow that they are receiving as a result of corruption in Kiev-controlled territory. And unfortunately, Western media, so-called media, of course, will pay no attention at all to this terrorist activity of the Kiev regime. TASS news agency is also reporting that Vladimir Zelensky, so-called president of Ukraine, fired the head of Ukraine's Air Force after F-16, after first F-16 of Kiev regime was neutralized. Basically, rumors still continue about what had happened to that F-16. Some sources are reporting that this plane was destroyed by Russian strike. Other sources are claiming that this US-made F-16 fighter jet was shot down by also US-made Patriot air defense system. There was some friendly fire incident. Whatever the case, of course, Western ruling class most likely is not happy, because they were pushing this narrative that F-16 is gonna be next wonder weapon. There were so many wonder weapons, isn't it, previously? And Russian armed forces destroy all of it, right? And demonstrated that there is no wonder weapon in hands of Western ruling class. There is no such a thing. But still, Western so-called politicians, so-called experts, and their so-called media was pushing this narrative that F-16 is gonna turn the tide, become some sort of game changer and stuff. And it is possibility that first F-16 was shut down by their own, personnel. Patriots are operated by NATO staff, by the way, and F-16s most likely are also maintained and piloted by NATO staff. And even though formally Ukrainian pilot get killed during this incident. But me personally, as I said in previous updates, I would not be surprised if we will find out later on that that pilot that allegedly was killed as a result of this friendly fire on F-16, that pilot was also citizen of some other country, NATO member state, and was a NATO pilot. I wouldn't be surprised at all to learn that that's exactly the case. Or maybe that pilot was neutralized on the ground and F-16 was shut down, which was piloted by NATO pilot. Although probably if that's the case, we will never learn name of that NATO pilot. But anyways, let's continue. Who cares, dear friends, isn't it? I mean, who really cares about Kyiv regime and their and whatever military equipment they are losing? Those Nazis and the terrorists should be exterminated anyways, and they're and demilitarized, obviously. TASS news agency is also reporting that well, foreign ministers of EU didn't manage to agree on an issue of allowing EU regime to conduct strikes deep inside Russian territory with their Western weapon systems that were delivered by EU. And yet again, dear friends, whenever I see this kind of information, first what comes to mind is that this is yet another attempt to maintain some plausible deniability in their hands, attempt from the Western class, because we all see Western weapon systems being used on Russian soil, right? Not just our armored vehicles, but also air bombs, also missiles, long-range missiles. So what this buzz is all about, I truly don't understand at this point, because no one has any trust to Western ruling class. First of all, no one has any respect for Western ruling class in this world, and I mean, I guess people are reading this news and are wondering what is wrong with these idiots, man. It's a factual that Western weapon systems already are used on Russian soil, right? On Russian soil, even in older borders, in the Kursk region, for example. So what they disagree here on, what this information is all about, man, some total nonsense. But I mean, it was a gathering of foreign ministers of the EU member states, and therefore, of course, media continues to pay attention to this crap people. RT is also reporting that Borrell criticized Hungarian veto on EU's Ukraine arms for cash scheme. EU's foreign policy chief Josep Borrell has expressed, and on the previous topic, by the way, probably one of the reasons why Western ruling class, Washington, Brussels, I mean, constantly are talking about not allowing EU regime to use weapons to strike deep inside Russian territory. Probably they are trying now to fool their own citizens, like they did many times before. Majority of their own citizens that are under heavy influence of propaganda, to create this false narrative that even though they are sending some weapons, some money and stuff, they are not involved, and therefore nobody should worry about possible retaliation from Russia. And I will say to all those citizens of the Western states that they truly have reasons to worry, because there will be Russian retaliation. No doubts about that. There will be Russian retaliation. It may not happen today, tomorrow, or day after, but if anybody thinks Russia will just forgive all these crimes that was committed against Russia and Russian citizens, then I don't know, man. If someone really thinks that, then I have a mountain to sell to those people, man. It's not happening. It was in best interests of EU and I mean of the societies of the collective West countries to basically be more proactive, to influence their own government and force them to stay away from this conflict that they have nothing to do with. It's none of the US business, right? It's none of the EU member states business. So they should stay out, but they don't. And one of the reasons is that public in the West, vast majority of the society, was very passive. They did not care that much that Western militaries were supplying Kiev regime with the arms to kill Russian citizens. Western societies did not care much about unofficial involvement of the Western militaries in this proxy war against Russia. So it's their fault also what is happening, and whenever Russian retaliations will take place, those people that were supporting all these hostilities against Russia should just, not be surprised at least, because they will get what they deserve. It is what it is, man. RT is reporting that, as I said, let's first go back to this news. EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell has expressed frustration over the Hungary's refusal to lift its veto on the use of some 6 billion euros or 6.6 billion US dollars allocated for the weapons to Ukraine under the European Peace Facility. Can you imagine the hypocrisy of these so-called elites in the West, by the way? They are calling this fund to supply Kiev regime or Ukrainian Nazis and the terrorists with the weapons, the European Peace Facility. How shameful European societies really are to allow this to happen. I'm not talking about elites, by the way. We all understand that Western elites, Western ruling class is an existential threat for humanity. But I am talking about now about majorities of the societies in the collective West countries. How they can allow this to happen, man, and for how long? I truly don't understand, man. Those people are brainwashed, by the way, big time, man. And they are danger for themselves, first of all. Those people have no idea what the hell is going on, and should get ready for all the retaliation that is about to come, for all the crimes that was committed against Russian citizens and Russia. So yes, Brussels are mad on Hungary, by the way. Rare occasion when a member of the collective West is acting responsibly. And of course, I'm talking about leadership of Hungary, and I have to mention also current leadership of Slovakia. Although, unfortunately, previous leadership of Slovakia was extremely Russophobe, and they basically demilitarized Slovakian armed forces. That's how much weapons from Slovakian armed forces they sent to Kiev regime, including Air Force, by the way. Slovakia now has no Air Force. Can you imagine that? And you know why? Because they send almost all everything that they had to Kiev regime. Fighter jets, weapon systems to it, and so on. So yes, Brussels is not happy with Budapest. Okay, I think very responsible and adequate government of Hungary will deal with this issue, and the people of Hungary, by the way, will also be okay. They will be okay. Maybe it is really the time for adequate states in the Eastern and Central Europe to look towards the BRICS, really, because it is clear that EU is a terrorist organization, NATO is a terrorist organization. So why countries that have self-respect stay in these terrorist organizations that is guilty of death of millions of people in last 2-3 decades? It's a legit question, though. RT is reporting here, and quite interesting news, that Washington is behind the delay in finalizing a G7 plan to grant Kiev a 50 billion loan financed by frozen Russian assets. Euroactiv reported on Thursday, citing sources close to discussion. The EU and the US jointly frozen estimated 300 billion US dollars in Russian sovereign assets at their start of the Ukraine conflict in early 2022, ever since Western states have been mulling using their funds to aid Ukraine, while it's not Ukraine, it's a key regime, by the way. Ukraine is something different. While they have so far failed to agree on their outright confiscation of the money, the G7 decided in June to provide Ukraine with a 50 billion loan to be paid back using interests from the frozen Russian funds. However, according to Euroactiv sources, the US has been hindering the process of finalizing the plan due to concerns or repayment, which depends on how permanent their freeze of the assets is. Under EU rules, the bloc renews sanctions targeting Russian assets every 6 months and needs their unanimous approval of its 27 member states to do so. Diplomatic sources cited by their news outlet claim that Hungary, which currently holds their 6 months rotating EU presidency, could at some point veto extending their freeze, which is interesting. Anything is possible. Hungary may veto further prolongation of their freezing of the Russian assets in Eurozone. Theoretically, that's a possibility for sure. Slovakia may be on the same page, but it is interesting. It is interesting that US is stalling on G7's 50 billion loan to Ukraine right now. And I remind the difference. It was the US, obviously, US Treasury and Finance Ministry that was actively pushing on G7 members who basically start stealing Russian assets. Maybe due to upcoming presidential elections in the US and possible change of the regime in that country, maybe things are changing a bit in Washington, or maybe these officials permanent establishment, or how they say it, people that are always in position of power no matter which party is in officially in White House, that permanent state or officials class bureaucracy probably is feeling that winds are changing and therefore acting more cautiously. Who knows, maybe that's the reasoning behind this cautiousness of the Washington. It is possible. And by the way, interesting news that ICC, so-called International Criminal Court, orders Asian country to arrest Russian President Vladimir Putin. Mongolia must detain Russian President Vladimir Putin because it is a member of the International Criminal Court. A spokesman for their Hague-based body has stated, let's see how much respect Mongolia has for this criminal organization, ICC, so-called International Criminal Court. And it is criminal organization, by the way, obviously, and a tool in hands of Western ruling class. If you have any respect for this organization, I feel sorry for you. You have no idea then what is going on in this world, because come on. And RT is also reporting that Putin has no worry basically about ICC warrant on Mongolia trip, according to Kremlin. So Russian President Vladimir Putin is not concerned that Mongolia could arrest him on International Criminal Court charges during his upcoming trip. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said Putin is scheduled to visit Mongolia on Monday, on 2nd or 3rd September, by the way. So Putin is scheduled to visit Mongolia on Monday for a World War II commemoration. This would theoretically put him at risk of arrest on the ICC the war crimes warrant, as Ulaanbaatar recognizes the Kurds' jurisdiction. We have excellent relationships with our friends from Mongolia, Peskov told reporters on Friday. All issues concerning Putin's visit have been worked out separately, he added, noting that Moscow has no concern about the ICC warrant, which is interesting, by the way. Definitely, this visit of the Russian president in Mongolia clearly demonstrates how despicable ICC is and how disgraceful the so-called staff of ICC are. I remind you, dear friends, that those criminals from ICC issue arrest warrant for Russian president and the ombudsman for children because Russian forces evacuated kids, by the way, from zero line, from line of contact, and saved their lives. And for that, for saving lives, by the way, Western ruling class ordered to their prostitutes in ICC to basically issue arrest warrant on the Russian president. Who the hell are those bitches, man, in ICC, man? Come on, though. Or who the hell is Western ruling class? Those garbage individuals, man. Who they think they are? Mistakes of the nature. But anyways, man. You can, as you can see, I have no respect, even slight respect, for Western ruling class, so-called elites and their puppets, being in ICC, by ICC, or whatever, man. I don't think they are decent human beings. I don't think that they deserve any respect at all. They are disgrace of humanity for sure, and they're unfortunately existential threat for humanity. And it's all of us. It's obligation on all of us, by the way, on all of humanity, to neutralize those Western so-called elites by whatever means necessary, until they kill us all, because that's the way they are pushing this world towards World War III, right? And nuclear exchange. And I mean, vast majority of our community probably will agree that if World War III happens, then none of us gonna find it exciting or interesting, because most likely all of us will be dead, right? So we should know who our enemy is, and it's definitely Western ruling class and their puppets. Anyways, let's continue. And I wanted to mention that this small media project of mine with several channels on YouTube, Rumble, and Telegram is completely subscriber funded. And I will be immensely grateful if you will also consider to support my work, if you find my channels interesting and useful. You can support through PayPal. You can support through Boosty platform, by the way. You can tip from Boosty platform or donate. And you can also subscribe on the Boosty platform, and you can subscribe on my Patreon, by the way.
Hello.
And yesterday on Patreon and Boosty, I published a second episode of Behind the Scenes. It's short videos from several days. I was sharing some stories, you know. Some small fragments. Yeah, I mean, it's behind the scenes videos, by the way, in which I share, you know, I make short videos and I share opinion on some topics, or I show how my day go. goes. Hopefully community will find those behind the scenes videos interesting, and all the links, by the way, all the links are under this video in description box and in the pinned comment, link to my PayPal, Boosty, Patreon. And when it comes to Patreon, by the way, monthly subscription starts from $5 a month, and you will have access to all the content that I have there. And then you can regulate. If you want to raise your support, you can do it. If you want to decrease your support, you can do it. It's easy to do that. And the subscription on Boosty starts from 500 rubles, Russian rubles, which is a little bit more than $5 a month. So that's being said, dear friends, let's continue now. And the Vzglyad newspaper is reporting that well, Russian armed forces establish an observation post between Syrian and Israeli forces in Golan Heights, which is occupied Syrian territory, occupied by Israel. I shared some photo and video of that. This is it, by the way, this observation post. I shared this on my Telegram, and also, by the way, on Telegram I shared this information that this morning there was a Russian drone strikes on military and logistics infrastructure of the Kiev regime in the Kiev region. This video is from Kiev region. It's a Gerin drone, as you can see it. It has quite easily recognizable silhouette, this triangle shape. So yes, there was drone strikes on military and logistics infrastructure of the Kiev regime in the Kiev region today. Also, RT is reporting that Trump threatens Zuckerberg with a life in prison, according to Politico. So former US President Donald Trump has accused Mark Zuckerberg of plotting against him during the 2020 elections, and has warned the Meta CEO, and Meta is of course Facebook, Instagram, and some other platforms, garbage platforms, by the way, I will say. You know, I have no respect, not for anything that comes from Meta. CEO of that. So Trump basically warned the CEO of Meta, the Zuckerberg, against doing anything against Trump. Again, in the vote this November, according to an excerpt from his soon to be released book seen by Politico. Okay, so Trump basically wrote a book, and he was issuing some strong warnings towards Zuckerberg in that book, titled Save America, and set to be published next week. Trump's book features a photograph of himself meeting with Zuckerberg in the White House when he was president. Under the photo, Trump wrote a caption stating that the media chief would come to the Oval Office to see me. He would bring his very nice wife to dinners, but be as nice as anyone could be, while always plotting to install shameful lock boxes in their true plot against the president. Trump Politico reports says appears to be referring to 420 million contribution that Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan made during the 2020 presidential elections to fund voting instructor. Their former president went on to claim that Zuckerberg had told him that there was nobody like Trump on Facebook, but at the same time had stirred it against me. We are watching him closely, and if he does anything illegal this time, he will spend the rest of his life in prison, as will others who cheat in the 2024 presidential elections. Trump reportedly warns in his book well, interesting, truly strong statements and strong warnings. But yet again, Zuckerberg is a tool, by the way. Trump shouldn't worry about Zuckerberg. Trump should worry about people that are pulling the strings and using individuals like Zuckerberg as their puppets. Trump should be worried about deep state and the true Western ruling class. Not these puppets, man, because who the hell is Zuckerberg, man? He's just a talking head of the platform that is, I mean, basically controlled by CIA, right? So focus is have to be on true enemies. That's what I will recommend to Trump. True enemies of the humanity, which is the Western ruling class, and Trump knows that because he's quite often is talking about dangers of the World War III. And who is pushing towards World War III? It's a Western ruling class, right? RT is reporting that Brazil bans X, formerly Twitter, in a censorship clash with Musk. So Justice Alexandre de Moraes of the Supreme Court of Brazil has ordered the operations of the X, formerly Twitter, to be immediately suspended and threatened draconian fines against anyone trying to sidestep the ban. Well, there is quite a big conflict between Elon Musk and authorities in Brazil and a number of other countries in Latin America. And I believe Brazilian authorities also banned Starlink, by the way, from the operations in Brazil, which is also a big deal. So, I mean, what can I say, dear friends? I don't support bans on social media platforms or any platforms really, because I think it's better to compete, and maybe Brazilian authorities are not happy with their anti-Brazilian propaganda or whatever on the platform, but if you know, they should make sure that they are on the right side of history, and then when truth is on your side, then it is much easier to combat false narratives, right, that is pushed by your enemies. So therefore I cannot support ban on X by Brazil, as I don't support, by the way, that Rumble is blocked in Russia and their access to YouTube is so slow that you cannot use YouTube without a VPN. And unfortunately, until situation will resolve with YouTube, probably I would not be able to make live streams no more, right? Which is bad. But I mean, who listens to us, man? Who listens to us? We are just ordinary people. And we should always remember, by the way, that we are best allies of each other, ordinary people worldwide, you know. Vzglyad newspaper is reporting that leadership of Georgia's ruling party, in this particular case, Secretary General of the Georgian Dream and Mayor of Tbilisi, Kakha Kaladze, famous football player, by the way, he was playing for Milan in Italy, right? I believe he was playing for Milan. So he is now mayor of Tbilisi for quite a while, and he is also Secretary General of the Georgian Dream, and he went on rant and basically blame Western ruling class for crossing the red lines because of their financing of the so-called Georgian opposition, which is controlled by the West, and also non-governmental organizations that are also controlled by the West, right? And we all remember statements from the other high-ranking officials in Georgia when they directly said that the US was involved in 2 attempts in 2022-2023 to conduct regime change in Georgia. In 2024, we see quite a large-scale attempt to destabilize Georgia and conduct regime change once again when Georgian parliament was adopting law on foreign agents. And I'm afraid during the I'm afraid Western ruling class will use upcoming parliamentary elections on October 26 in Georgia as a starting point, or as a starting point to try and destabilize Georgia once again, and to conduct regime change, and then sacrifice people of Georgia, their best interests, and Georgia itself as a state for their geopolitical agenda. And for example, by using Georgia as some sort of Taran or second front against Russia. So it is good to know that Georgian leadership, current leadership of Georgia, is clearly realizing who their enemies really are and who are the enemies of the Georgian people. And I hope they will take all necessary measures to make sure that public security is guaranteed, and country itself will not undergo yet another this colored revolution organized by CIA under this despicable Western ruling class. And also interesting news, by the way, that Silvanov, finance minister of the Russian Federation, stated that Russian GDP is growing faster than expected, and well, according to him, in 2024, overall growth of the Russian GDP may reach 3.9%. And if we take in account that Russian Central Bank, Russian Finance Ministry, they are very conservative institutions, then my prediction is that Russian economy will grow at least 4.5% this year. Because if you take a look at the statistics, it's almost always the case that finance ministry and central bank is making very conservative statements about possible or very conservative predictions on GDP growth, and in reality numbers always are high, almost always. And I think in 2024 we will see similar situation, and Russian economy, just mark my word, by the way, Russian economy most likely will grow at least 4 to 4.5%, which is unbelievable success, isn't it? Especially if you take in account that over 20,000 sanctions being imposed on Russia by criminals that are in charge of collective West, right? Interfax is also reporting, and I will end this update on this news, that well, Starliner, by the way, Boeing's spacecraft will descend to Earth, to our planet without a crew, and it will start its descent on 7th of September. Of course, many members of our community, or entire our community, is informed that US astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams went to International Space Station on the Starliner, although before launch was postponed several times due to some technical issues, but thankfully once launched, Starliner managed to reach ICC, and US astronauts were not harmed. But then later on, when some checkups were done on the Starliner, and it was a time for astronauts to come back, basically. Well, NASA realized, and Boeing's specialists, that Starliner is not ready. There was some leaks, some issues. Starliner is not ready, and it's not safe for a crew to descend on Earth on that spacecraft. Most likely, NASA will ask Elon Musk, or maybe already did, to evacuate basically these astronauts on SpaceX's craft. Although, of course, NASA always had the opportunity to ask Russian side to send home these US astronauts on Russian space craft. But I guess that would be too much of humiliation for NASA, and therefore seems like, at least for now, they are refusing to ask Russian side, Roscosmos, although I'm quite sure, by the way, I mean, if Roscosmos is asked about it, there will be no issues there. Of course, Russian side will provide all the necessary support to rescue these astronauts. But this is definitely humiliation, by the way, for NASA, and first of all, for Boeing. First of all, for Boeing, this company is in deep waters right now, isn't it? And I doubt that they will manage to even survive. Most likely, Boeing will be dropped or divided on several different companies, because it's a total mess, man. This giant cannot be run properly. It's just too obvious, and therefore it is better probably to divide in smaller companies that can be managed a little easier. Anyways, this is it for today's update. Relatively long update, but hopefully you will find it informative and useful. And if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary just about anything, or any topic will do. This is the only way we can at least try and influence algorithm. And for very same reason, if you can, please share information about my channel with your friends in real life or on internet, on any of the platforms that you are actively using. That will be very helpful also. And finally, if you like my work, if you want support, you can do it. All the links are under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Have a great day, great, wonderful weekend, and take care.